Hello and welcome to Deacon's Virtual Open Day, a day that's all about tomorrow. My name's Dr. Liz Weldon and I'm one of our Associate Heads of School for the School of Life and Environmental Sciences. I'd like to give a presentation on our Zoology and Animal Science degree. But first, I'd like to start with an acknowledgement of country. As we gather for this meeting, physically dispersed and virtually constructed, let us take a moment to reflect on the meaning of place, and in doing so recognise the various traditional lands on which we do our business today. Deakin would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the lands on which our university campuses are based. The Wadawurrung people of the Kulin Nation, on whose country our Geelong campuses are located. The Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation, on whose country our Burwood campus is located, and the Pequotton people of the Maar Nation, on whose country our Warrnambool campus is located. I myself am located on Wurundjeri country, and on behalf of us all, I pay our respects to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander, traditional custodians, elders and ancestors of all the lands from which you may be joining as our gathering today. I express our gratitude for their care of country, which continues to sustain us as it has done for millennia. Education has a long and rich heritage on this continent, which we aim to honour and reflect in the ways we teach and learn. So what is zoology and animal science? Well, the focus is on animal biology, the science that studies animal adaptations to environment, physiology, behaviour of animals, genetics and ecology, animals' relationship both to each other and to their environment. There is a strong emphasis on scientific investigation and developing scientific methodology and procedures related specifically to animal biology. And through the knowledge and skills you gain throughout the degree, you'll be able to inform management and conservation efforts on animals in our environment. So what specific skills do you learn with zoology at Deakin? Well, there's a focus on developing thinking and problem solving, analysis and presentation of your data and your thinking. And the reason that we focus on these skills is because that's what our employers want. And we know this because our course is developed in conjunction with a panel of industry experts. So it's not just teaching academics, but behind that, the curriculum development is based in consultation with a panel of experts from industry who know what skills they want from our graduates when they employ them. And so our course is filled with hands-on laboratory components and field experience so that you come out job ready and you can tailor your course to meet your individual needs through a choice of elective units. So let's look at some of the learning. There's discipline-specific knowledge, of course. So that's the animal biology, the theory and facts about our different animals in our environment, the laboratory skills that you learn and the field skills. Then there's the design and conduct of scientific research, where you will develop skills in designing your own experiments and field projects, where you will learn to acquire data, develop strong methodologies so that your data is robust and sound, where you'll learn to manipulate some of that data so that you can analyze it, do statistical analysis on it, and interpret that analysis, the results of those analyses, so that you can write up a sound scientific report. To complement that skill set, you'll need digital literacy, and that includes your basic computing skills like word processing and spreadsheets, but it also involves data handling, dealing with large data sets and what to do with those, how to conduct the appropriate statistics tests, and how you present that data to a range of audiences, whether that's a community group that you might need to present information on the environment to. Perhaps it is to an academic audience or to government or industry. And there are different ways we can present our data for each of those audiences. You'll also develop critical thinking, critical evaluation of science. That includes critical evaluation of your own experiments, but also critical evaluation of the science produced by other people in the field. And interpreting data and noticing trends and thinking through what that means and how that can be used to solve some real world problems. You'll also have the opportunity to do a lot of teamwork. So there's group work in the laboratory and there's field work that you'll be conducting in teams, and many of your workplace opportunities will also involve teamwork as well. And then of course there's also self-management, your time management, but also your attitude when you come to class and your attitude in the team environment. They're all aspects of self-management. So where will all this learning take place? Well, the course is offered on our Waurn Ponds campus at Geelong, but we have both on and off-campus learning opportunities. So we do on-campus classes, we do virtual classes, we run on-campus seminars, sometimes we run virtual seminars. We have opportunities for hands-on lab-based work face-to-face at the Waurn Ponds campus and also at our Marine Science Centre, which I'll talk about in a minute. We also have opportunities for doing fieldwork in various locations. And we have the opportunity of doing work integrated learning or work placements external to the university as well. But core to our course are the units, the subjects that you will be taking, and each one of those units is developed on an online learning platform. So there will be additional resources that you access on a weekly basis for each of your units, for each of your subjects on that online portal. And that allows you to prepare for your face-to-face experiences. We also have pracs in computer labs where necessary for our data management, and there's lots of flexibility within the course. So you can choose to be part-time, you can choose to be full-time, you can choose to a degree the amount of online or face-to-face learning that you pursue. And you can also work part-time if you choose to, or have other family commitments that you might be obliged to undertake. And all that fits within a degree. It requires, as I said before, one of those key learning skills of self-management and time management. Who's going to teach you? Well, we have a great team of academic staff with research and teaching capabilities. Your course director is Pete Biro, and within the team, we also have another number of other academic staff who work across various different animal groups. So we have staff who work on microfauna, organisms that you have to look at under the microscope, macrofauna, the larger creatures. We have slimy animals, we have scaly, we have let's see, furry and feathery animals all covered by this team. They also work across marine, freshwater and terrestrial ecosystems. So you get to explore a really good range of animals and environments that they live in, and also the different fields of research that you can do. Everything from physiology to behavior to conservation and genetics and disease analysis. There's a whole range of different research areas that these staff work in that will enable you to get some really good experiences during your degree as you study under them and learn about their research as part of your learning. Okay, so a closer look at first year content. content. In first year, it's really a foundation year. We build some of those basic science skills in areas of ecology and environment, biology, cells and genes, form and function, physics as well for the life science that's specifically targeted for our students in biological science areas and biomedical science areas, so that they have a good foundation specifically targeted to them. And we're proposing to introduce an introductory zoology unit coming up shortly as well. So that's one to look out for. There is laboratory and field work right from year one that you'll be involved in. So you'll have lots of face-to-face contact with staff and develop some really good practical skills in that first year. In second year, we build on those foundation skills, but we do that by looking more at your specialist area of zoology. So the areas of study include animal behavior, marine biology, experimental design and data analysis. That's where we really get into some of the nitty-gritty of scientific investigation and how we analyze and interpret and demonstrate our results. We look at animal diversity and genetics as well. And again, this is supplemented all with our field, our experimental, our computing-based experiences that you will get to explore. In third year, we build on those first 2 years' knowledge and we put a lot more of that into practice, so that you have the opportunity to do a lot more independent scientific investigation or team-based scientific investigation. Evolution, ecological and conservation genetics, disease ecology, those study areas all build on the scientific knowledge that you've developed in cells and genes through to genetics in second year, leading into third year where you can, start to embark on some experiments in those areas, in some of those units. And then in areas like professional practice, you get to put a range of skills to use. And I've got a slide that deals specifically with work integrated learning or your professional practice unit in a moment. So third year is all about developing your professional skills so you're ready to go out and use those foundational knowledge in a professional capacity to undertake scientific investigation and present scientific work to the community, to government, other organisations. Okay, this is an example course structure. Our course does change over time in response to industry feedback and our academic curriculum development. In first year, as I said, it's core science skills. In second year, we move into foundational zoology, and by third year, you're looking at your professional development and specializations. You'll see there's a series of electives that you can do too. The electives are important as you develop your own career profile. So you might choose to look at journalism and writing skills and develop communication as one way to develop your own profile. You might choose to look at ecotourism and business management as a way to develop your profile. You might choose to work your way through a series of global experiences and develop global citizenship. So in elective space, you get to choose how you want to make your degree unique. Okay, the experimental laboratory skills that you will develop include microscopy, of course. You'll do some genetic tests of various types. You'll work on physiology experiments, ecological experiments and field studies. There'll be various measurements and identifying animal structures and animal behaviors as well. We also have a lot of field-based and practical work for you to do, and we have a marine biology unit that's run at our Deakin Queenscliff Marine Science Centre. This is a great base because, as you can see in the bottom image, we have Swan Bay and we also have the open ocean. So you can conduct field sampling across different types of marine environments and see the differences in the organisms that are present across those two environments. In the top picture, we actually have some of our international students who I took out on one of our boats, and we did some trawling on the seafloor at Port Phillip Bay, and we were able to have a look at some of the benthic organisms, those organisms that inhabit the sea floor. So that was really great day and great field experience for those students. There's also experimental field skills that you would develop in our field studies program. So there is an intensive field studies program between second and third year, where you get to look at the adaptation of organisms to different environments. Sometimes students will go to an arid environment, they might go to a coastal environment. It varies year on year. There's but I guess the consistency is that you will always get to experience and develop your practical field sampling methodology, and you get to develop your communication skills as you present your results to your peers in the class. And you also get to liaise with conservation partners and find out what's happening in those types of environments, what projects are being run, and how the animals are being studied and cared for in those different environments, and what needs to be done in the future. Okay, so that brings us to our work integrated learning. So these include our professional practice unit and our practical experiences that you can get that are with our industry and community organisations, not-for-profits, all those different types of avenues that you can explore. Many of our students will go out to do field-based placements. Some will work in laboratories, in animal husbandry. There's all sorts of different avenues you can pursue. We have pictures here of some of our students out doing fieldwork for their professional placements. And you also have the opportunity to get further work integrated learning by volunteer opportunities. These could be organised through the university or independently. Our researchers, our academics, our staff, and also our postgrad students offer many opportunities for our undergrad students to become involved in their research and work with them on various projects throughout the degree. Another opportunity you may choose to pursue is our global environmental placements. So we offer international placements of 80 hours or more to our students as an elective. Students over the previously have been involved in face-to-face placements offshore, but we also offer a range of virtual placements as well, and a number of our students have just completed a virtual placement in Indonesia. In terms of our face-to-face placements, we have covered many different continents. We've done South America, we've done Africa, Southeast Asia, and there's many opportunities to study, for example, at one of the turtle centres or in a wildlife park. Some of our students will work with conservation groups offshore. There's many different opportunities. Some students go to New Zealand and work within the national park system. So many different opportunities available for global placements, both offshore or virtually, should you choose to take that opportunity. Some of our students also choose to do study tours. A popular one is to Borneo, which is a biodiversity hotspot, and that particular study tour in the years that it runs is held in November and December, so between our at the end of our second trimester. And students that go on that study tour have the opportunity of working with government agencies, with not-for-profit organisations and academics and local community groups to see what their conservation and management strategies are. Okay, so what are the graduate destinations? Where can you go with a degree in zoology and animal science? Many of our students will develop discipline-specific skills that they take into the workplace, working with animals as zoologists, park rangers, environmental consultants, or monitoring particular environments, and some will pursue further study to undertake further research. For those students who choose to go a little bit broader with their scientific skills that they gain through this degree, they might pursue careers in education and do further study there. They may become science communicators, science writers, or radio presenters. They might work in ecotourism and developing education programs or support for tourism providers. There's work in biosecurity, that's a growing field, fisheries officers, we have a number of students working there, and also as scientific technicians across a variety of different fields. Then there's the more generic or transferable skills that you'll develop, which can lead to all sorts of careers. You might take them into management or finance. You might work in insurance or legal areas. There's leisure, there's travel, so many different opportunities, and we'll have a look at one of those in a moment. We have in these images Veronica. So Veronica completed her zoology degree with us, and during that time she worked as a volunteer at the Halls Gap Zoo and was able to secure a position there. And she works with animal husbandry, she looks after the animals, she develops new exhibits, she works in education. So there's a range of different tasks that Veronica does in that role. Outside the kind of what you might typically think a zoologist does, we have some of our students work in areas that use some of their scientific knowledge, but in a broader context. So Thomas did his honours with us and then went on to work in nature documentary film industry, and he's working in the UK currently. So using the knowledge gained from the science discipline, he's able to apply that in the making of the documentaries. We have Kelsey, who's completed her honours with us and got a job as a educational tour provider and curriculum development for the aquarium. We actually have a number of students who go on to work at the aquarium. That's quite a popular workplace in Victoria for our students. Kelsey's gone on to become a casual academic at Deakin. You may even have Kelsey demonstrate one of your practical classes if you join us in the next few years. And Kelsey is also studying to become a teacher, so she's doing her further study in education. So they're just a few different careers that come from a zoology degree, and there are many, many more. Your entry requirements into our degree vary on your pathway in. So if you're a school leaver, you will need a score of at least 25 in VCE English in units 3 and 4. You also need to complete a VTAC application and have an ATAR, the lowest selection ranking at 66.25. We also have pathways for students coming in from other tertiary institutions and vet and colleges, and you can apply with your academic record from those institutes, and that's just one of the selection criteria that's used. And you may also be eligible for credit for prior learning as well. If you come to us without the educational application, Perhaps you can come in with life or work experience application, and that requires a personal statement. And that requires you to tell us about your passion for zoology and animal science, and also the skills that you've developed through your life experiences, maybe your work experience or volunteer experiences that you might be able to put down that demonstrate the skills that you think will help you to be successful in pursuing a zoology and animal science degree. So lots of different options and lots of different ways to enter the course. Some of you may be listening in who have done a zoology degree or an animal science or animal biology. I have an animal biology background, and you might be looking to pursue further studies. So there are opportunities to continue your study with us in zoology and animal science. We offer research programs from our undergrad honours right through masters to PhD, where you will be paired with a academic supervisor to work on a major research project. To go into honours from an undergraduate degree, you need to be aiming for a weighted average mean across your grades of 65%. I'd just like to say thank you for joining us. To finish up, we do have a live Q&A coming up next, where you'll be able to meet some more of our academics, and they'll be able to answer your questions to do with zoology and animal science. There's also a whole range of resources on this page and across the Virtual Open Day website that you might like to explore. And we have on hand a web chat and experts manning that can answer your questions through that medium as well. And I'd love to meet you on Open Day on campus in August, where you can come on campus, meet the staff, have a chat to us, talk about what you would like to pursue with your studies at Deakin, and have a look at our facilities and experience some activities on campus, get hands-on, find out what we do. It'd be great to meet you there in person. And finally, we might have some international students joining us today. And I'd just like to let you know that we do have information sessions specifically targeted to you, and they will go through your specific requirements for applying to Deakin as an international student. It's a little bit different to our domestic application process. There's fees and scholarship information, and also information about our support services to help you settle into life at Deakin. So if you'd like more information on that, please reach out to our international study experts. We have a web chat available today, which you can access by clicking on the yellow speech bubble in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. We'd love to hear from you and help you on your journey to Deakin. Don't forget, the live Q&A is open for everyone, domestic and international. Please have a look at what other students, prospective students are asking, and add your questions into the Q&A forum as well. Our experts will be there ready and waiting. Thank you for listening to me. I hope you found some valuable information in this presentation about zoology and animal science. See you on Open Day.
Hello and welcome to the live Q&A Zoology and Animal Science session. And I'd like to think of all the courses in Deakin that this is ultimately the best course that starts with Z. By the way of introductions, I'm Associate Professor Tim Jessup, and I'll be your MC for this session. And I'm also a proud member of the zoology course team. And today I'm very gratefully joined by Associate Professor Peter Byron, or Pete, who is fortunately the Zoology and Animal Science course director. And hopefully between us, we want to make sure you walk away with a really good understanding of what's the nuts and bolts involved in Deakin Zoology course, because it is one of the best courses within the science stream at Deakin University. But most importantly, this talk is really about helping you guys really be really clear about why you might choose to do a degree, and in particular, a course in zoology at Deakin. And so we're really saying a big hi to our prospective students and your parents, and thank you for joining us today. What is really evident about the focus of our Q&A today is make sure that we can really answer all those questions in sufficient detail that you really walk away with a clear understanding of what zoology is about. And most importantly, what we really would like you to get, it's a great way to spend 3 years at university. It's a great course. And so really be thinking about the course in totality. That's the time commitment. And we've got multiple campuses, but this course obviously is at Warren Ponds. And we really do encourage you with our additional open days during August to come and visit and have a look at the great facilities at our on-campus destinations, be it at Warrnambool, Warren Ponds, or indeed at Burwood. Great things to see there. If you would like to ask a question, as I'm sure many of you have already attended today, then please type your question into the Q&A section in the question panel on this page, and we will endeavour, as ever, to try and answer as many of those questions that we can. If you do not get a verbal response from our presenters, you will hopefully receive a written reply from one of our expert staff, and we have several of those people available to serve and get those answers back to you quite swiftly as well. If you have any unanswered questions at the end of the session, please use the web chat. That's at the bottom of the page. And again, that will provide a very effective way for you to receive additional information that might help clarify any questions or queries that you have about doing not only the zoology course, but any course at Deakin today. And you'll note that that web chat is on the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. It's with that yellow chat now icon. So to kick off, we'll start addressing some questions, and they're starting to flow in, and there's some really good questions. And the first one is from Mitchell. And Pete, this is a good question for you, because you will have had to thought about this a fair bit as the course director. It's a pretty important prerequisite from all our courses. What are the advantages of the zoology course, for example, compared to, say, the science course?
Oh, well, the advantage of the zoology course is that it has a principal focus on what I call sort of fundamental biology and animal ecology. So we focus critically on things like animal physiology, behavior, life history, the interactions between these kinds of variables. And these kinds of studied domains, I guess I could call it, are things that are fundamental to understanding how animal populations work. And they inform in areas like conservation. These kinds of areas are fundamental towards being able to apply basic biology in a conservation setting, in an industry setting, and in many other settings as well. So I think that's kind of a quick, in a nutshell, sort of synopsis of it.
Yeah, and I think it's probably really important to point out that biology is an incredibly broad, as is science, is an incredibly broad field. So and even within zoology, it's a very old field. I guess it's, you know, several hundred years old, and it's very, very complex in terms of all the different, I guess, foci or focuses of you know, interest that you can study within a single degree. So even within zoology, it's very hard to just capture everything about zoology, but we've been very, very, I think,
other things I didn't mention and I forgot to, of course, because it is so broad, is there's evolution, adaptation, you know, animal diversity, form and function. There's all kinds of things that are subsumed within zoology under that sort of umbrella of what I call sort of fundamental biology that informs these other areas and are critically important in that regard.
Yeah, that certainly defines what one of the differences, but why would that be an advantage, do you think, to do zoology over a more general degree? I mean, a really clear one to me is that you may be really interested in animals, and many people that do come into zoology have, you know, since probably being kids, for example, have really loved animals. And so it really gets you focused and starting with that front and center when you take on this course. So I think that's one of the clear advantages. If you already know what you love to do, and for many of us, like Peter and myself, studying animals in nature was certainly a big draw card to come into university. So that would be one of the clear advantages as well. But also you can't do everything. And I think, you know, learning how to focus and specialize, and that's another great thing about Deakin. Even within our science sort of degrees, there's many types of majors as well, but zoology is far more comprehensive and will give you a much more in-depth, I guess, coverage of that field of looking at animals in nature.
Yeah, much more in depth and extremely broad at the same time. I think that's really the key advantage to it, because you cover so many areas of fundamental biology in the course, and I think that's so important.
Yeah, that's great, Pete. Look, we might move on to the next question just from a time perspective. And this is a really popular question. And it's a really important question because one of the things that we really would hope at Deakin is that a university degree is a really important stepping stone, no matter what degree you take, that it leads you to what we would call probably, a graduate destination of choice. And by that, I mean, ideally, when you do a degree at university, it would be really lovely if we could all walk out and do the job most associated with that degree. Now, front and foremost, to sort of help students achieve that goal, I guess, is to make sure that we have, particular elements within our degrees that let students do that. And within the zoology course, one of the ways that we can do that, beyond all our great labs and facilities on campus, is also to offer some fieldwork or fieldwork experience. Pete, do you want to just sort of expand upon that a bit to let people know about what type of work opportunities?
Yeah. Well, there's heaps of opportunities for getting sort of hands-on experience in all kinds of the units that we offer, starting in first year right through to third year. So there's lots of hands-on practicals with live animals. Just to give a quick example, I teach animal behavior, and we have several different practicals where we actually do manipulations with live animals and study their behavior and how they react to changes in their environment and things like this. There's a very interesting marine unit that Craig Sherman teaches, and that's a very field and hands-on based sort of thing. And they take an entire weekend to do a field excursion at the Queenscliff Marine Station. And that's a great experience for students. And then the next one, of course, that comes to mind, of course, is your unit, Tim, where you take students out to the Little Desert and in this field intensive unit to learn all kinds of animal field sampling techniques, but also learning how to design experiments, how to compile data, how to analyze the data as well, things that are critical to that kind of work in general. That's stuff within the context of our course per se. But then there's and of course there's the professional practice unit that's core to our unit, and that involves an 80-hour practical placement in the industry, in the workplace for students, in addition to all kinds of career-related skill development that they do. And then there are a number of other kinds of industry and career placement units that students can take as electives then. And of course, then there's the fun one that a lot of students take up, which are the global placements, where students can go abroad to many different countries. Indonesia, Africa come to mind as a few I remember, where students can work on generally sorts of environmental problem sorts of questions, and students participate hands-on and get involved in those kinds of projects working in various different countries.
Yeah, and I think one of the strengths of any type of field experience, particularly at a university level, it really does give a lot of these kind of soft skills that are really desirable for students once they start seeking sort of more specific vocational jobs once they finish their degree. And some things that sort of really come to mind, particularly in my field unit, where we basically take 50 students out for a week out into this little desert, and they've got to get up early, they've got to work in teams, they've got to do things that they may not necessarily like, they've got to work alongside students that they don't know. So it really involves, beyond all catching all the animals and being out in these amazing, beautiful landscapes and learning all, I guess, the scientific side, but it's also the sort of interpersonal dynamics, the teamwork, the network building, the ability to kind of conflict, resolve issues with team members, all these things that, we never really get taught, but they sort of crop up in these field units, and they're really, really useful to sort of take into, future destinations, because, it's much more than just dealing with books when we obviously, and lab skills, for example. You really need to develop a broad set of holistic skills. And I think that's what I really love about these field units as well. They really sort of bring in those additional sort of areas beyond that sort of classic sort of university training as well. So they're really great to see.
And I think under that umbrella of those kinds of hands-on skills, I kind of also want to put in some of those very, very generic sorts of skills around quantitative critical thinking skills, experimental design skills.
So just Pete, I'm going to stop you there. So Yeah, that's certainly true, but I mean that's a bit of a mouthful. So I mean this sort of this critical evaluation. Well, why is that important? I mean, can you sort of just explain why at the heart of students, why we really sort of focus on these sort of really core academic skills, because it's not always evident to everyone why critical evaluation is so important. Can you try and
Yeah,
perhaps expand on that a little bit?
for sure. The what we know without doubt is that employers are looking for students that have strong thinking skills, analytical skills, time management skills, being able to handle data sets. This is increasingly in the last decades. We're in a world of ever increasing amounts of data and data collection. And it's these kinds of, I keep referring to them as generic skills that employers are really after, because these are skills that take time to learn, and so that these are really very, very important ones, and that and a lot of students that go on to get jobs in various areas often get hired because they've developed these kinds of very generic skills around being able to write and express themselves, be able to give a presentation. This happens in every workplace where you might have to stand up in front of a group of people and give presentations singly or as a team. And so all of these kinds of generic skills are things that we stress throughout the course, starting in first year and developing and expanding on them right up into third year, that are so important, and perhaps even equally as important as the hands-on skills with field sampling and other things as well. So.
Yeah, great. So that's very useful to know. And we've got another question here from Hugo. And it's a more sort of specialized question, and it's getting back down to sort of fields of interest that zoologists graduates might be able to follow on once they've graduated. And it's really in terms of conservation, the field of conservation, which is obviously very topical with so many pressing problems around the world, and including in Australia as well. What professional fields do you think the zoology degree helps in terms of aiding graduates look for jobs in conservation? Are there any sort of things that spring to mind?
In a conservation setting, I think that probably within government and industry is probably where that would factor in the most. When I think of, government is, often interested in many different kinds of things, from biosecurity compliance and things like this, but government does an awful lot of monitoring, which feeds into conservation, as well as field and technical and laboratory kinds of skills that feed into conservation as such. And so I see there as being a demand for people from a zoological perspective that have these specialized fundamental skills that then, as I would always say, these are the kinds of things that inform on areas of study like conservation. And then, of course, in areas like in industry, environmental consulting is often concerned about development in conservation, that kind of development conservation sort of interface as well.
Yeah, great. And we might just move on to the next question. Other types of jobs that zoologists could do once they graduate? I mean, we've talked about some key fields there in terms of sort of government jobs related to conservation, or maybe consulting jobs, as you mentioned, look at that trade-off between trying to optimize, development versus environmental values and things like that. But there's a lot of other jobs that zoologists are able to do, and I think we should probably just realise to let people know how diverse, in fact, these destinations are.
Yeah, well, I guess some of the government jobs that we kind of touched on already are things that you might think about existing at like a federal or a state level, but jobs similar to those also exist at the level of councils, called shires as well. There's a lot of that going on, and then there's like quite a number of zoology students in the past have found themselves in the business world as well, in industry, working in a business field, because there's a demand for data and analytical skills and communication skills. And so they take those skills they've learned in there and applied it into a business environment. And many of them have gone on to be very happy in that sort of an environment as well.
Yeah, look, I think what we used to always face, I mean, going back several years, of what we sort of realised, and I hope sort of, people that come along to these degrees, when you ideally get employed once you've graduated from a zoology degree, I mean, you're not going to necessarily, and probably very rarely, in fact, end up working in a zoo, which was always this historical thing. Now that's obviously, if that's what interests you, then this degree is clearly going to put you in the right direction to do that type of thing. But it's really important to know that zoology, being a really core stream of biology, which is a really core stream of science, really lends itself to doing a great diversity of jobs. And they may not always be as directly linked in terms of handling animals, but those broader skills can lend themselves to doing many things. We can think about some of the finance jobs you mentioned. Obviously, there's things like teaching, secondary or primary school teaching. And these are the more kind of, I guess, lateral jobs that still are linked to zoology, but may not be the classic way that we sort of look at, graduate destinations, but we certainly should.
Yeah, education and education and tourism come to mind as well, right?
Yeah.
People taking their knowledge and being, into teaching and being tour guides within the context of rehab centers and wildlife parks and things like that. A former student of mine was worked at Melbourne Aquarium, giving tours and teaching visitors about the all the different animals there in the aquarium and that kind of thing. So
yeah, I mean, I can even look back in sort of my own career, and I sort of haven't always been an academic. And I think the first job I got out of uni was as a marine biologist, and I was working on the Great Barrier Reef, effectively as an ecotourism guide, and I'd take snorkel tours and take people around.
I didn't even know this, Tim.
Yeah, well, I did that, and then I after that I sort of worked on a beach to me, collecting sea cucumbers and stuff like that. So I had that zoology and marine biology degree under the belt, and I did actually end up working for a couple of different zoos as well. I worked for the San Diego Zoo, as in the Madagascar films, and I also worked for Zoos Victoria as well. So I feel like I've been able to jump around, and I've worked for national parks as well. So that's all really coming out with a zoology degree. So it can lend itself to a heap of stuff, and I think that's really important for people to realise when you select a degree.
And one of the biggest things that helped me get along in my career was the fact that I got a summer job in my second or third year of studies. This is a 4-year degree in Canada, of course. I got a summer job working at a fisheries research laboratory in a provincial park, assisting with ongoing government-funded studies centered around fish conservation and management. And it was the best thing in the world. I just expanded my brain. I learned lots of hands-on skills there, and that opened doors to further study and employment down the track. So
I think that's great, Pete. Look, just from a time perspective, we've been talking a lot about destinations, but we haven't really talked very much about the course. And I think maybe it might be worth spending a few minutes on that, really going through the structure of the course, about our core units and electives. And it's really important for people to remember that at Deakin, you do both. The core units reflect the major or the central theme that lends itself to the title of the course that you're enrolled in. But these electives are also great for lots of different reasons and allow you to pursue additional skills and interests. So maybe we'll just start with the structure. So just remind people, like all Deakin science courses, it really consists of 3 years and 24 units. But what would you say was quite interesting about the composition of the units in terms of zoology course, Pete?
Well, the composition of the courses of the units within the course sort of, it follows sort of a 3-year structure with sort of learning foundational kinds of knowledge in the first year, and then in the second year you start to develop sort of your field experimental quantitative writing skills to a greater degree, and then that's taken to the next level again in your third year. And because of the way the course is set up, there's quite a lot of scope for electives. There's 7 electives in the course. And so that gives students a lot of scope to take units outside of their area of study if they want, but maybe a bit more to the point is that it opens the doors for students to take units in areas that are related to zoology, like units in marine biology, marine ecology, conservation biology, sustainability, things like this as well. And these are units that are offered across campuses, and now with with digital learning becoming more and more common, and lectures are recorded even if they are live, it's possible for students to take units across different campuses quite easily these days. And so I think there's lots and lots of great opportunities for students to make use of those electives in that way.
Yeah, so we might just expand about the online content of the courses. And Deakin's been effectively a world leader in online sort of teaching and development and use of online technology to deliver its courses. And that's sort of perpetrated through all the degrees. And that's also very evident within our own degree, zoology. And the way some of the online delivery is sort of, I guess, managed is it's sort of at two levels. One level is really you can have a whole entire online unit. And there may be, several units like that within our course, for example. But the other way that we try and do it is through this model of blended learning. And Pete, maybe you want to explain what this blended learning is about, because it's a very strong hallmark of teaching and learning at Deakin, and it's very prevalent in all our degrees, and including the zoology degree as well. So perhaps touching on that.
I guess to touch on that in a broad sense, it's many units now might have all the lectures online via Zoom, and these are recorded. Some units now, because of COVID, has died back. We've returned to the classroom, but even many of those lectures now are live online Zoom lectures as well. So this is I think it's very flexible and a positive thing because now students can return to the classroom and attend lectures live. As well as for cater to students who don't want to do that, or they can't do that, because many students have part-time jobs. I'm increasingly finding out there's lots and lots of students that are working alongside their studies. So having these lectures streamed live and then also recorded offers them lots of flexibility in their learning. Practicals are now coming back online, but then there's also there's a sort of a blend between sort of face-to-face practicals, but then there's also been a lot of content that's also been moved online as well, learning resources. So I think that never before has there sort of been such a nice blend of flexible ways in which to learn within the context of the course.
And maybe just touching on that flexibility a little bit is, I mean, we want it to be flexible. Obviously, you've mentioned about, giving students obviously the opportunity in many cases to do part-time work because they need to support themselves and have other interests and endeavours, so create that flexibility. But some things that we have really learnt is that it's better to do those in person. And so when we maintain things like practical, we really do want our students to come on campus, because our campuses are large. They have these fantastic facilities. They have these great kind of equipment, labs. There's great ways of students still interacting with each other. So it's really important to get that blended balance right and really use it as a very crafty tool to make sure when students are actually on campus, what they're doing is really, really important, not only in terms of their teaching and learning, but they're also interacting with their cohort. It's really great, as I'm sure all of us that have gone through university remember, that one of the best things was to actually catch up with friends on campus and have a chat, go to lunch, then go into your classes, work together in teams, and really enjoy that side of it. It's just so important because you end up with lifelong friends from those types of experiences. And, that's another thing that we really want to encourage. It's not all about teaching and learning and marks. It's really about the experience as a whole. We want it to be really, really positive and motivating for our students. So we need to sort of think about how to get those right balances, and that's really what that blended learning is trying to do. There's another question here too, Pete, as we move on from sort of blended learning and talking a little more about the course structure and the elective. So just quickly, before we do leave that, so how many core units? And by core units, we're really talking about the units that are really specific and focused on zoological sort of interests, right? So how many of those units out of the 24 units across the 3-year are currently core units? Because it sort of gives,
That would be 17 out of the 24.
Yeah, so I think for people out there that are shopping around, perhaps particularly students, as prospective students, is that really think about the ratio between these core units and elective, because the more core units gives you a couple of really important signs. One of them is it really tells you about the level of sort of specialisation and detail that go into a degree. And so, for example, if you do a more general degree, then you would expect the level of core units to decrease. So one thing we were really proud of with zoology is that we can say that we have a large number of our core units 17, in fact, that are, really demonstrating how much sort of effort and emphasis that we are putting on zoology. And then we've got those elective units, which can be taken across other branches of science.
Yeah, those 7 elective units, I think, are some of the most useful. I think that's like a critical addition to the course, and there will. I mean, this opens up the opportunity to do minors in the future. There's plans underway currently to have some new minors introduced, which will be complementary to the course and things like that as well. So, yeah, studying broadly, different areas, complementary areas, all those electives are really good things and a really positive thing for the course.
We've got another question here, Pete, and I'm just conscious of time. What about the possibility of doing a double degree with zoology?
A double degree with zoology, to my knowledge, is not possible at this time.
That's right. That's my understanding too, and it's something that may be available in the future. But there are certainly different degrees within Deakin that do offer double degrees.
Other courses do offer those kinds of things, but we do not.
Yeah, that's right. And I think part of it is you have to be very kind of on top of things to do double degrees, and they don't necessarily lend themselves to merging with all courses. So that's perhaps one of the reasons they're not as general as you might think. So, one thing we haven't really talked about, and it's hard with this virtual thing, and this is why we really do encourage you, if you are really, even considering even just a tiny little sand grain worth of coming to Deakin, that please come along to our real open days, which are held in August, and they basically take place on our different campuses at Warren Ponds, and that's next to Geelong, obviously, where we actually do most of our teaching for zoology. But of course, we've got campuses at Warrnambool in more regional parts of Western Victoria and Burwood in the city. Now, why we'd really like you to come to those things is, first of all, see this amazing kind of, building and facilities, but also, particularly from the zoology perspective and from the science perspective, come and have a look at our buildings, because there's a question here that's really getting to that. What type of labs and facilities do we have at Deakin? I think it'd be fair to say we're very, very, I guess, fortunate to have lots of.
Yeah, we're pretty blessed from a research and a teaching perspective. We have really, really good and extensive facilities for doing all kinds of work. So it's really fantastic in that way. And so I hope that we'll have planned for open day an opportunity to tour students around to a whole bunch of these different kinds of facilities and show them what we have on offer for teaching and for research as well. Yeah.
You look, just briefly, there's a question, and it's another question that we kind of get quite commonly from year to year as well, is can you use a degree as a pathway to possibly become a vet?
This is not a degree that's commonly used as a pathway to veterinary science. I think that's a bit of a misconception, and so I think I would advise students to speak to a course advisor to find out exactly what the pathways are to veterinary science.
Yeah, I think that's true, and but just for time's sake, we might need to wrap up, Peter. And we're going to just finish off with this really last succinct thing. It's the money question, and it's a really good question. What makes studying zoology and animal science at Deakin unique? Well, from my perspective, I've worked in different universities, taught zoology in different universities, but I can tell you very, very quickly, having those 17 core units in zoology makes it one of the most bespoke, specialised zoology courses within the country. It has units that you will not get anywhere else in Australia. It provides a very unique perspective on the zoology degree. It's very linked to both Australian understanding of animals, but also puts that often in a global perspective. And we've talked already about global placement. So there are some really strong attributes that make our course not only unique, but also very, very useful to allowing you to go on to further destinations as well, whether that be professional or continuing on through your university studies as well.
And the lecturers that teach these units are amongst some of the best researchers globally. I mean, these are people with global research records, and they're incredibly passionate about what they do and what they teach. And I think that they really bring that kind of passion for research and and generating knowledge to the classes that we teach there. And so I think that's part of all of that.
Yeah, that's great. Look, we thank you so much, everyone, for coming along to our Q&A today. It's been a pleasure. Not that we can see you, but we've been, we really appreciate taking your time out on the weekend to come along and learn more about zoology. But of course, many of you will be watching many of these Q&As for different courses at Deakin, and we strongly encourage you to please follow your passions. And we'd love to see you here next year. And
we hope to see you in August.
Yeah, that's right.
At the proper open day, so you can actually see our actual physical entities in person. So please come.
Yes. So unfortunately, that's all we've got time for today. And please, again, if you have any outstanding questions, I'm sorry we couldn't get through everyone's question today. Please use that Q&A at the bottom of the screen. And we wish you all the best in your pursuit of further studies, and hope to see you at Deakin. All the best. Thank you very much.